Welcome to the Red Diamond Wargame Podcast. I am your host, Major Kurt Locker Honig, and joining me today is Major Alec Meyer, gamertag IronMarshal, representing HMH 464, along with his partner, Captain Chris Parsons, at this year's Commandant's Cup. Alec, thank you for joining me today.
All right, great to be here. Thanks.
Please note that all opinions expressed are entirely those of the participants and do not reflect the United States Marine Corps, their units, or any other organizations of which they are a part. Why don't we get started by telling me about your background and how you got into wargaming?
Hi, yeah. So I'm a CH-53 Echo pilot by trade. I spent my captain my company grade tour on the East Coast at HMH 461. Right at the end of my tour, I'm an aviation safety officer, weapons tactics instructor. So I was in the squadron for about 5 years. And so at the end of my tour, I got selected for EWS. So I went to resident EWS, and when I was up there, there was a wargaming tournament. At the time, it was Dr. Lacey. He's a professor at the War College.
Mm-hmm.
He's really into this type of stuff. He likes, talking smack as much as gaming. He started up something. I think it was the Viking Shield Wargaming tournament, and it was basic Napoleonic games. And I'd never done anything like that before. And I've done co-war games, but we'll get to that later. But so I entered, I played. I think my team got second or third place. I
Nice.
had to learn the games on the fly. It was
Mm-hmm.
Napoleon at War series,
Mm-hmm.
which are some of my favorites. Very simple to learn, hard to master type thing.
Yes.
And that got me into Napoleonic history,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of fed more into wargaming, and it just kind of snowballed from there. I've always been a bit of a gamer. I've played a lot of different real-time strategy computer games, grand strategy computer games. I like board games. There's a lot of mechanistic similarities between like war games and like war game design and like other something you wouldn't traditionally think is a war game. There are some direct analogs like Risk or Stratego, which was brought up by the previously. But so I did that, and then I rolled over, and so I got selected for major when I was in school, and I was looking for a B billet, and the EWS instructor gig kind of fell into my lap.
Nice.
And so I stuck around after my like 10 months in school and just moved upstairs to be a faculty advisor for EWS. And as a fac ad, it was me and another guy, Major Jerry Peter. I think he's a lieutenant colonel now. He's an 0505 planner. But he was
Mm-hmm.
basically my next door fac ad, and we were the two wargaming guys. And so we functionally designed um, what was known as Expo Ops, Expeditionary Ops, with Mr. Barrick. So Mr. Barrick gave an initial swag and gave us initial rule set, which is a carve out of the operational wargame system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes what we use is sometimes called TWS, and we took that and we applied it to our MagTaf Ops short course, and we basically tried to we started enabling how to run double blind war games between
Mm-hmm.
two student groups, and that kind of blended together. It was more of an execution game, not really a co-war game, but they learned a lot.
Yeah.
We would try to simulate a whole lot of things in this one game, with at the same time making it least technical as possible. So they would give us orders, we would adjudicate it all behind the screen, and we would feed them back, BDA and like results and like all sorts of stuff. We would try to simulate what's happening.
Yep.
While we were doing that, we're also running in parallel a like wargaming exploration enrichment, um, where we would do some computer-based games. There was one that we worked on about the Falklands War. We would do Command Air Naval Operations, which is also in the Wargaming Cloud. There's a professional edition. It's extremely technical. I like the Napoleon at War series, and then there was a few other games we kind of peppered in there that built into Flashpoint campaigns, which was on the Wargaming Cloud, and so we also took that and we had basically built accounts for the entire student body, tried to figure out ways for them to fight each other. And so our first year's fac ads, it was kind of nascent. We were kind of working into this. Second year, me and Jerry Peter moved into curriculum development, and we just kind of kept snowballing this. And so we just kept plussing up more and more. We found Command Air Naval Operations really clunky to use for a MagTaps Ops afloat. It just requires a lot of. It's a really good game. It can be extremely specific. It
Mm-hmm.
requires a lot of expertise. You have to have people who really know the game, and so that nothing happens quickly. So
Right.
you can build a very sophisticated plan, and I can talk more about that game later. I did a conference in Rome with Matrix Games and a lot of people who were using it, and I remember a lot of their use cases. We could talk more about that later. But so we ended up dumping that and taking Expo Ops and using that for both a shore and a float, and just trying to simulate more and more, and getting the students used to fighting a living, breathing enemy,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
showing that that is a part of wargaming. You're not modeling the, you can model the enemy a little bit, but ultimately you're going to tell your unit to do this. The enemy's going to do something, and you're going to interact.
Right.
So we really wanted to focus on that. Kind of long-winded answer here, but
No.
so we did that. Jerry left, and then I was the wargaming guy my last year, and I had all of it. So we did a whole Flashpoint campaign, student-on-student thing.
Mm-hmm.
We implemented a new a basic war game in the doctrine course. We started to get the students really early to start fighting each other, and
Mm-hmm.
knowing that hey, that's great, you built this big plan. What happens when you're fighting another Marine who thinks like you do, and
Mm-hmm.
you guys have similar competing or maybe less vague objectives on the battlefield? Because we like to take for granted we know what the enemy's going to do, right? And frequently in a lot of these games, it's hey, here's this piece of terrain, we want it, they want it, fight. But
Ready to go.
that may
Mm-hmm.
not be their goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
At all. And we're assuming we make assumptions and tactical we choose, and we assess and we try to estimate what their goal is, and we
Mm-hmm.
try to we don't always take that into account super well. And so it just became more interesting. As that snowballed, I've acquired personally 20 games.
Nice.
I like playing on the computer. For some games, it simplifies things because the
Mm-hmm.
computer knows the rules and you can't break the rules.
Right.
However, there's something to be said about playing in person
Mm-hmm.
and actually being able to interact and communicate with your opponent. And so I prefer playing that way when I can.
Mm-hmm.
Long-winded answer. Now I finished up EWS. My team did the Comments Cup last year for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
2024. We got second place to McTog. And then this year came back. We actually made it in off the alternates list, and got second place, so we did all right. So I'm trying to build up a wargaming club at the unit I'm in, and we've had obviously success so far, and try to kind of work it up from
Nice. Tell me more about this wargaming club.
there. The one I'm trying to start.
Yeah.
I have talked to a number of my enlisted maintainers.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of people play video games. A lot of people play board games. Obviously we're all Marines, and wargaming is this happy confluence of all of those things.
That's right.
Right? It's super easy to get into because, to an extent, some military history is baked into all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I know a number of Marines who do bolt action. It's
Okay.
a tabletop game. It's similar to a Warhammer type thing where half of it, at least over half of it's probably painting your miniatures. But
Mm-hmm.
when it comes down to it, it's miniatures on tabletop with certain ranges and certain damage that get simulated via die rolls, which are similar to most other war games that they're fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and they use that to simulate the actual battles. I'm not much of an artist, so the painting really isn't my thing.
Yeah.
Not that I wouldn't play a tabletop game. It's just I don't want to have to. I've got too many hobbies. I can't put that much into the back end before I
Right.
get to the action. So I've got some that I've already talked to, and they're into that type of thing. I obviously
All
have
right.
Cap Parsons, who I brought up. I kind of gave him um, some background and taught him everything I could. He did pretty well, completely independently of me. And then there are a number of other captains that have been playing board games and other things that can easily translate. And so I just got my feet under me in my billet. So now that that's kind of dust has sort of settled there, and I've gotten settled in, I can start just having weekly some sort of meetings where I can get all the Marines that are interested together and play some of my games. And if I get enough that are into it, I'll communicate with Mr. Barrick and see if I can get some working accounts, and we can start working the cloud.
Awesome. No, that's exactly what I was hoping to hear as soon as you said that, because that is the reason why we did this, is this looking over the space and kind of wondering how many of us are actively wargaming and knowing that the answer is probably not enough. And so how do we get more people involved? And you're doing it exactly the way that we would expect. You have a motivated Marine who's been exposed enough to some of these different games that they can at least show someone else the ropes. Get them involved, get them playing. You hear Sebastian Bay, the guy who created Littoral Commander, he says it a lot. Play more games. And I think that is absolutely the best advice, where it doesn't take this monumental effort to get someone involved in wargaming. It takes setting up a board game and saying, hey, do you think you could beat me? Do you think you can beat this guy? And we've had that feedback where you start with something as simple as a chess set. Have the chessboard set up and ready to go. Someone is playing, and then that simply grows into something else. And eventually, you reach enough interest that you get those guys signed up into the cloud. And now we've raised that level of competition. I know for the Commandant's Cup preliminary, we had 55 teams, but that number is a little misleading. One, because unlike last year, Tim made the decision not to run a MAR admin because there are so many steps into getting people into the cloud. And then two, not all of those 55 then were able to stick through all 3 rounds of the prelims. I know you and I extensively went through almost 2 rounds in the prelims. And full disclosure, I got hit hard with spring break and taking care of my 4-year-old son and 2-year-old daughter, where wouldn't have thought that was going to be a no kidding limitation to my ability to wargame. But you're not exactly an easy person to play in Company Commander Modern. And so it was not let me just move my guys real quick. Like, if I was casual about how I moved them, you would make me pay for it. And I didn't want to do that, and ended up basically timing out to the end of the tournament as opposed to letting you absolutely decimate me all the way through the end of Red's turn.
And it's a thing, you know, and playing more games, it's learning new rules, it's adapting on the fly. It's like, hey, tactics that work in this game don't work in this one.
That's right.
It's games at different levels, right? You can get really technical with it. You can do like advanced squad leader, right? Which is an extremely you're controlling fire teams or you know, of people, of Marines or soldiers, right? Specific weapon systems. Your machine guns are placed in very specific places. You know, that was a game. And now retired Colonel Todd Simmons was my first director at EWS, and he was there for 2-3 years, kind of long for a director. But that was one of the games he played when he was young. You know, he was a platoon and company commander, and the rulebook, the intro rulebook's about that thick. The advanced rulebook is like this, right? And it is. But if you get people into it and you have enough people working, you know, you work through the rules, and it's as realistic as you can get it at that level. With paper, and you'll see that that's a tension, right? You have on one end you have realism, and the other end you have playability.
That's right.
Right, and every game has got some, and that's where most games have on the back like how difficult they are to play, and that's realistically the tension. And they're just putting that in graphical form. Like, this game is difficult to play because it's very real, which means there's a lot of rules.
That's right.
But that you got to know what you're getting into, you know. Company commanders like that. It's still a work in progress, right? So there's clearly some limitations, and there's clearly some things that are constantly being tweaked. But you know, very small micro movements can have dramatic effects.
Absolutely.
And then the cascade begins, right? If you lose, it's like you lose two of these vehicles, and now it feels like a small loss. It can turn into a cumulative steamroll very quickly. And
Absolutely.
It's like, man, how do you? And then your whole plan's got to change.
That's right.
Like, I now don't have what I need to overcome that. So now I have to shift my entire mentality about this objective.
I mean, the only reason why I had any chance at Red in Company Commander Modern was I was able to take out the Mattis system of my opponent. That's 2 vehicles. But those 2 vehicles are the difference between having any kind of air support, being able to really apply some loitering munitions. It completely changed the nature of the game. He actually had a much more difficult time putting me away than I think he had any right to, because it just comes down to, like, those 2 assets were so important to any other strategy. Right now he can't keep my air bottled up. As we all learned, the Mattis is extremely effective at keeping enemy air bottled up. But once it's done, that's a very difficult factor to account for. This enemy air is able to move around and strike targets all across the battlefield when the Mattis isn't there to influence it.
And that's an interesting. That is one of the examples of a war game like having a real life analog, right?
Mm-hmm.
Air superiority is defined as not as being able to operate without prohibitive interference,
Right.
right? That doesn't mean you won't have any interference. It just
Mm-hmm.
means you won't have prohibitive interference. And when you're actually looking at vulnerabilities and capabilities of adversary systems, their air defense quickly becomes something that the ground side doesn't always appreciate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not the thing that's going to kill them. But when you start thinking about how the Marine Corps likes to fight, how the
Mm-hmm.
Joint Force likes to fight, we've invested heavily in manned aviation and air delivered fires. And if we want to fight like we want to, those things have to come down much earlier than usually we give them credit for.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, the BM-30s and the long-range rocket systems, yes, those are important too. But it's right in there, and then you really got to
Absolutely.
ask yourself, like, and it says as an EWS instructor, you'd see this all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? All right, cool. You want to destroy the BM-30. We can't destroy the BM-30 until the S-400's down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or neutralized. What does that mean, right? And so you'd be like, you want to destroy this thing, that means you got to destroy this thing, and you're backing up, and then your go, no-go criteria actually starts materializing.
That's right.
It's like, so that means we need these assets, which could be, you could, S400, look at the way the system's, and you find the holes in the system and the thing that integrates it, and you go after that. Then what asset are you using to kill it? How are you protecting it? How are you, and you're just layering. And that's one of the
Absolutely.
examples where Company Commander, it's like, hey, the thing that's going to affect, I've got all these aviation assets. I need to get
Mm-hmm.
them in. I have to kill this first. But it gets really attractive in that game to just look at your hit percentages of things.
That's right.
And then you'll see like a clumped up like group of infantry, and you're like, ooh, do I just kill this?
Yeah.
And you got to ask yourself, and that's real time, like
Mm-hmm.
that's real time intel, right? That's you're
Mm-hmm.
weighing the risk analysis of that action in real time, and you got to ask yourself, is it more worth it to destroy the thing that's going to stop these assets, or do I got to take this opportunity that's presented itself right now?
Now you've brought up two different points that I would love to dive into both, and I'm pretty sure diving into one is going to make me forget the other. So the first one I was going to say, just because you mentioned it both as championing wargaming as an EWS instructor, where we're trying to get them fighting each other as early as possible. Would Company Commander Modern be a good game to start teaching that concept, or would you rather see it taught first and then war game to kind of cement that lesson learned? Because it's not easy to teach someone that the most important thing on the battlefield to kill is not necessarily like the tank. That's a crazy concept for a lot of company grade officers, because it's like, oh, that tank's the thing that most likely is going to kill me. It's like, cool, but welcome to the modern force, right? This is not just about what you can see. This is a layered battlefield. It's a multi, to start stealing army terms, it's a multi-domain battlefield, and you have to attack all these domains simultaneously, or you're not going to achieve the effects that you want. What war games would you like to see them play to really cement that lesson early?
Um, Company Commander isn't bad. Uh, some of those are almost best exemplified by more tailored, like OWS style games.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, but you need to give them it's some of the tensions in like the recon fight, right?
Yes.
So the force you're up against, the TO, pretty sure the TO they have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a bunch of Chinese, Russian forces, stuff we were gaming against conventionally. You can assess where you think some of their tactical air defenses are versus some of their more their more operational air defenses. How
Mm-hmm.
many of them are held at a higher level and maybe attached, or put in some sort of, to use our terms applied to them, like attached or
Mm-hmm.
put in direct support of a lower unit. I don't know. They have to assess that, and sometimes we can put that in there to kind of give them hints, like, hey, what do we think the enemy's main effort is? If your main effort was really important, what would you do to protect it,
Right.
right? Where would you and you got to really start flipping the table around and doing the stuff that the red cell tries to do, but really you need almost a red team to really
That's
think
right.
about how are they gonna win,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the red cell is just there to flush out the red Koa, right? And people will be in red cell and try to red team. It's like, dude, red cell's not trying to win. You're trying to flush out the red Koa and inform the blue plan, right? Red
Mm-hmm.
team, you've got people who are experts in that. on the enemy's TO how they fight, and they're going to
Right.
look there and how are they going to beat you. But sometimes you don't need them. Flip it around. Think about it like you would think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Is this access, avenue of approach? Like, is this a good idea? Yeah, sure. It looks beautiful to you, but maybe
Yeah.
it's obvious and it's beautiful to them too. And you got to balance all those things.
Mm-hmm.
Company Commander Modern could work for that. It's kind of slow unfolding, and so it can
Fair.
it,
Mm-hmm.
it, it's quick to pick up, hard, and it's the micro tactical things that'll screw you over. Who are
Mm-hmm.
you leaving so they can see? There's some problems that students are going to complain about, like drones are too good because they are, OPF
Oh
are
yeah.
too good because they are. You
Yep.
know, there are some things in there that we need to be able to flesh out a little bit um, before I think it's really useful. Flashpoint campaigns isn't bad. We've used that, and
Mm-hmm.
in that you have a lot of the hidden forces.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But something that I did when I was a fat cat is I kind of built my own. I built my own pieces, right? And the Columbia games have got blocks,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And the early models of Littoral Commander before it was packaged
Right.
as Littoral Commander when it was still like FMF Wargame,
Mm-hmm.
which we tried as a student at EWS, we kind of the whole school played,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're blocks, right? You stand them up, and so you get this idea, and then when you reveal them, you flip the block over. The same idea is kind of
Mm-hmm.
flipping the thing, but same idea, right?
Sure.
Stuff like that can be very useful to students. And Sebastian, I've met him a number of times, talked to him a bunch. He kind of calls it out on his box: Grand Tactical Educational Wargame.
Oh yeah.
Like
Mm-hmm.
Littoral Commander is great for this. There's a lot of capabilities in Littoral Commander you don't need to use, and you can tailor it down to what you're trying to game. So you can have very specific cards, JCCs that attach to things, right? And you can talk about, hey, you see how this thing is like able to intercept your attacks? Maybe we need to
Mm-hmm.
do something about that first. And then the thing that rapidly starts happening though, you start getting into missile math, and you start, doing
Right.
this whole. It's almost like Lanchester equations, right? If you've read, what's the book? It's the Navy's Fleet Tactics, Naval Operations.
Oh, fleet tactics.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so
Mm-hmm.
we
Mm-hmm.
we had the whole student body start reading that. So we bought like 250 copies of that book, and then the second semester, the whole student body reads Fleet Tactics at UWS
Interesting.
before I left. And it kind of starts, basic naval warfare, and it gets all the way to the missile age. It's
Mm-hmm.
been
Mm-hmm.
updated.
Mm-hmm.
If you introduce missile math too early, you're kind of starting to miss the point. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I can talk about. I can go on dovetail on this forever, but
It's
there's
an easy one.
yeah, wargaming is tricky because in my opinion, the best games, easiest games to get into and get people into the hobby are the older ones,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that are more historical in nature. And because the modern games become very technical very quick, and there's a
Yes.
lot more factors in play, and it's a lot more like what is that specific system? What is the range of that specific system? What can it detect? Does it have radar? What's its optics? All
Right.
these things have become very complicated in a game structure. But if you want to get people into it, you start with some of the basic Napoleonic or Civil War games,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And after they start understanding why those games were structured like they were, the mechanics that are in place, what a CRT is, what the terrain effects chart is,
Mm-hmm.
when you
Mm-hmm.
start layering the more complex games up, it's the same stuff, just
Mm-hmm.
with more factors. And so it's
Absolutely.
easier for you then to decipher, all right, this is what I'm working with. Okay, this is what this means.
Yes. I would be very reluctant to introduce someone to wargaming by having them play OWS. That would be devastating. And I feel like I've actually seen that, having attended the OWS facilitators course and seeing like '06 Navy captains being exposed to, hey, this is wargaming, this is what the ship capability is, and then just kind of watching the gears start to gum up a little bit where it's like, well, but what about this? What about that? It's like, no, it's purposefully not that specific. This is not a computer. This is a piece on a map. We're going to say it can move this far and its weapons have this distance where it can do these things. As long as you accept that at some level, this is not about a specific missile system. It's about this ship has these missiles. Whatever generation, this is the current capability of those missiles. Eventually, you might have something better, but for the planning purpose, the education purpose, recognizing these capabilities is going to be sufficient to the task. recognizing that before this ship can do X, Y, or Z, A, B, and C must be accomplished, or else you're simply exposing that ship to destruction. And I think it is difficult sometimes for without that basic understanding, like critical results table. That's a terrain effects map, just like you said, incredibly important to understanding. Yeah, there is going to be a roll of dice involved in here, but to make sure that it's not just the roll of dice, the map matters as well. And so once you understand how that map applies and how these different effects come together to achieve this result, it begins to make a little more sense. And that is another handy piece of Company Commander Modern is that there are dice rolls being conducted. It's being done by a computer. It's showing you what some of those dice rolls are. So when I'm playing you and I feel like I'm about to smoke something, pretty devastating, and then I roll a 1 and it says like, yes, you have an 80% hit probability, but you rolled a 1, so you didn't hit it. Like, well, that sucks. Someone forgot to pull the pin before it left the tube. And that happens. That's a part of warfare, and that makes a lot of sense. It's important for students to learn that just as much as it is to learn everything else.
Agreed. And that's every game in existence. Like
Yes.
you can go play StarCraft, old computer game, and every piece of combat that's happening is a die roll,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are chances of things being up or down. It's all die roll. If you know people that play Dungeons and Dragons, right? Yeah, there's a heavy role playing element to that, but that's basically a war game with
Mm-hmm.
with some stuff people wanted to not just fight all the time, so they layered some like role playing into it. When it comes down to it, most of the rules are about how you fight,
That's right.
right? How much damage you're doing, what your odds of hitting are, like what
Mm-hmm.
that means. And you have more complex and less complex rules over the years. It's gone from more complex to less complex because they want to expand their player base, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's them trying to again find the tension of like what feels real whereas what's easy. And so you start abstracting some of those things together, which is what you basically were talking about with OWS. Like we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about a salvo of missiles. Yeah, a lot of things can happen here, but we're going to kind of abstract that together into the
Mm-hmm.
salvo and say that, okay, you're going to intercept with a salvo, you're attacking with a salvo. We're going to say it's approximately this many missiles, right? And you're going to really, it'll teach you things. It's
Mm-hmm.
about understanding what will happen when you go Winchester with ships. It's about understanding what will happen in this environment,
Mm-hmm.
how far you are from things, and different kind of threats you'll face. And it's a learning moment. Um, and then that goes for a lot of games. You can learn a lot about that environment, and that'll also go back to again, Colonel Simmons. I think he might work at McQuill now, but he liked to talk about the environment a lot, which is what you bring up the map,
Mm-hmm.
right? The map. The tank is scary, but in the mountains or in a jungle, a
Yeah.
tank isn't very scary, right? It's still like you don't want to get close to the darn thing, but like
No.
its capabilities are significantly reduced in
Mm-hmm.
that environment. And I'm not going to call out 2MEF here, but I was over at a exercise they were doing. The point is, the exercise doesn't matter. It was they're getting rid from FX. I don't know JTFX, building up stuff. And I was just over there as a fragger out of MAG because I was working at MAG, but they just happened to get me, and so I had to rewrite like their whole Frago because
Yeah.
it was based on I had to someone did do something and I had to clean it all up, right? Um, but an example is up in the high north, you have fjords, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you take an air defense system, a really sophisticated one like the S400, and you stick it in a fjord, um,
Where,
it can only look one
yeah,
direction or
it's
straight up.
getting.
And
Mm-hmm.
and the whole scenario, and well, not the whole scenario. I'm not going to get into it that much. But the point is, that was a factor,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a failure to understand the effect of the environment and the systems. And hey, maybe we should let this happen. This is actually this isn't a bad thing. Like let them put it there. Like hell with it,
Sure.
man. Um,
Learning
and
will occur.
yeah, and it's like, hey, this is actually not a bad thing for us. So it does not only at the captain level, like people not understanding the capabilities of systems, the effects of terrain. It's all over the place.
Yeah, I was going to add the other piece, and we were talking Sebastian Bay and Littoral Commander. One of my favorite discussion points about Littoral Commander is its use in describing Force Design 2030. So again, educational war game, we can array it in a way that it starts to test some of the different concepts and ideas of the stand-in force. What is it going to look like if the adversary is doing this, and these are the assets that you have, and then now you get to lay out these Joint Force capability cards. And as a student at Command and Staff, you start to see some of the detailed briefs, and I'm sure EWS at the time was receiving some of those briefs as well. Like, this is how we envision this force, understanding that learning is going to occur and change is going to be made. And the part that I kept kind of laughing is like, I don't see any air. Like, I'm playing this game. This is while I'm playing Company Commander Modern, and I'm having this choice between rotors and F-35s, or if I really shrink down my maneuver component, I can have rotors and F-35s. Like, how sweet is that? I'm going to be so loaded with air that no one's going to be able to touch me. I'm very excited about this. And you just have this Combat Air Patrol Joint Force capability card. And that started to beg the question. It's like, okay, where is this coming from? I get it, Joint Force. So presumably these fighter jets are coming from, if not the Marine Corps, they're coming from the Navy, they're coming from the Air Force. And it's like, okay, except we're in the South Pacific. We're in the South China Sea, we're in the Philippines, we're outside of Taiwan. Where is that airplane coming from? And it really starts to play into that. I'm going to deny these guys this particular card. I need them to think about this particular situation as if they're not going to have the air superiority that we were talking about before. It's this assumption of air superiority is not real. It probably won't be real in the future fight. We can't fairy dust, we can't magic wand this thing away. And I think that's a beautiful piece about wargaming is if we wanted to, just like Red was at the Commandant's Cup, they could simply not have any jets. Now what do you do? And there's kind of an amusing conversation with Tim about why that was. It's like, oh no, it's an error. Like, there needs to be some type of jets because we know they have them. It's not a secret. It flies directly into that assumption of air superiority that wargaming tells us is likely not going to be there.
Yeah, and it's important to note that air superiority is just, the lack of prohibitive interference.
Mm-hmm.
The enemy can have jets up, and we don't
Sure.
have air superiority. It doesn't mean we don't have cap up. In fact, almost everything we're doing is going to be cap or strike at that point. You're not going to get
Mm-hmm.
your CAS, right?
Right.
You're not going to get your CAS, and helicopter operations might be curtailed. But that
Mm-hmm.
and also depends, because the altitudes we're at, that may not be as big of a factor as we think it is. But you're absolutely right. In the South Pacific, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're looking at, hey, where are all these places that were important to the Japanese in World War II?
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out those were all the best places for us to base airplanes out of, because they
That's
were
right.
then and they are now.
Mm-hmm.
But there are now capabilities that can hit them. And so you start talking about tanking, you start talking about how far away these things are coming from. Australia starts to look really important. Palau, like first, second, third
Mm-hmm.
island chain, like all, maybe the Solomon Islands again. Like, things start getting very interesting very quickly. And you have
Mm-hmm.
aircraft carriers, sure, but losing a big carrier today is much more painful than it was in World War II.
And
And
it wasn't
so,
exactly easy in World War II either.
no,
So that's a big piece to all of this is before we start just making some of these assumptions, and that's where you're starting to get into a lot of the strategic level games, right? Like, do you have the industry turned on in such a way that you can start producing more aircraft carriers at the onset of the game? Because if you don't make that decision right away, you're going to be struggling in all the areas that we just mentioned. That time space gets incredibly prohibitive very quickly.
and this is something that the Air Force is grappling with also. So,
Hmm.
Marine Corps, our aviation command and control doctrine, centralized command, decentralized control, right? That's how we run
Right. Hmm.
through our aviation command and control structure, and just the way that we use delegated authority that decentralizes how they actually control. The Air Force for a long time has been centralized command, centralized, and then implied centralized control,
Hmm.
decentralized execution,
Hmm.
right? Um, and it's just been much more centralized. And you'll see that if you've ever been to an AOC, like, it's just so much in one place, right?
Right.
Um, and I can get the history for that. It would take me a long time. The history of the Air Force is muddled up, has created the Joint Force and created all the murkiness.
Hmm.
However, they've recently changed their doctrine to centralized command, distributed control,
Right.
decentralized execution, which is like, well, that kind of sounds like what we're doing with more steps. And in a way it is, but it's the same thing they're grappling with, right? They know they can't have one big AOC and one big place to put all their aircraft, right?
Hmm.
So they're playing with, expeditionary, like air expeditionary groups, right, and air expeditionary task forces, like pulling things apart, putting them in different places, just like we're trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
An issue that aviation has, and there's no way around it, is we have a significant maintenance footprint.
Yes.
Right? Um, if we want to have aircraft be fixable, they need to be able to return to some sort of firm base where we can repair them, and we have extra components. And that means, the main gearbox of a 53 Echo is 10,000 pounds. Right? We got to have a
Right.
crane that can pick one of those up.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to be able to fix that plane. Now, it doesn't mean we can't operate out of small bases, and if we have one of those that goes bad, that we just push that under some cami netting and pretend it's not there for a while until we can figure it out. We're working on distributed aviation operations and what all that looks like. But you're right, it's hard, and we're not going to know. And there's a bunch of games out there that can, Littoral Commander is one of the better ones that you can try to figure out what that looks like. And what and how much. It depends on what we're doing, right? If you have Marines in the first island chain, we're in the Philippines. What are our role? What are we actually doing? We're just trying to get ahead of it. I'm not sure we've really figured it out yet, but it's interesting to talk about.
It definitely is interesting to talk about. It's interesting to wargame. You mentioned before you wanted to discuss a little bit about modeling and simulation. And I think this is a great way to compare and contrast wargaming versus modeling and simulation. And while we were at the Commandant's Cup, we actually saw a couple of booths that were showing some of their modeling and simulation software. I know Group W has their Storm and their Swift systems, among others. I've seen a couple more. Have you worked with any, or have
I
you?
have not worked with those ones.
Mm-hmm.
I know, there's exquisite software that's out there that can do it, but a game like Command Air and Naval Operations will be used for modeling, right? Because they can program it,
Right.
right? Because they can write scripts for it, and it'll take specific pre-planned actions that whoever's designed the game will take, and they can program doctrine in, and McWill uses it for secret games, right?
Yep.
So they'll program it with all like the actual ranges of stuff, and they'll do actual strikes and actual like threat task groups, and program it all in there, and they'll just change a permutation, hit play, change something and hit play, change something and hit play, right? And all they're doing is they're taking all the doctrine that as it exists and just playing it out, 50, 60, 100 times, and you're pulling data, and you're changing one little variable and you're pulling more data, and that can be very useful for just determining like, hey, if we have a missile that it can go this much farther, right? That produces a more decisive effect most of the time. Something like that, right?
Yep.
So you can really model out the enemy, you can really simulate actual capabilities, and you can try to make long-term planning decisions based off of it, right? A lot of times when people think wargaming, they think stuff like that.
You're right.
Right? But that isn't wargaming. There's like little W and big W wargaming, right? And then we have educational wargaming, which is, I would argue, a little bit different from like more recreational wargaming. Educational wargames they can be bespoke. So I would call OWS almost a bespoke wargame. It's kind of taken a life of its own now, but you can tailor it very specifically for what you're trying to get, and teaching a specific lesson. You can do the same thing with Littoral Commander, which is why you slapped educational in there, right?
That's right.
You can adjust the rules, pull stuff out, and teach us one thing. And the idea isn't necessarily for one side to win. Yeah, sure, you're fighting the other person, but likely the game will end and there isn't a clear winner.
Right.
But by the time you've gotten there, everyone has a better understanding of the situation, of the environment, of the capabilities of each side,
Right.
strengths and weaknesses, and maybe some places where they can try to fight the other commander, right? Because that's really what you want. And a lot of what Clausewitz wrote was about beating the other commander, not necessarily beating the enemy.
That's right.
Or beating the entire army. And then, you've got more recreational wargaming, which all of that can build into Kudui, right?
Right.
So the more and more you play a game, and the more you see the situation, you can look at something, you can almost near instantaneously get a grasp of how it's going for each side. Like you just walk up on a table of a game you've played a lot, right? And you look at it, you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
That guy's beating the shit out of that guy.
Yep.
But
That guy's on the ropes.
I don't think either of them are aware of this at this point. right?
Right.
And you immediately know, like, is there a chance? Is there not a chance? Is this going to work out? And you can walk up, take one of the sides, and immediately change something to
Hmm.
try to increase your chance of winning because you've played that game and see that situation enough.
Right.
And that's what we want people to get all the time. We
Hmm.
want someone to be able to walk up on a situation and look at it and get a sense for what's going on, and then they can get in the weeds,
Yeah.
right?
It's that recognition. You've sped up the recognition, you've enhanced it. So now you're spending less time trying to understand the situation that you find yourself in and more time making the right decision. More time then being able to communicate the decision, ruthlessly exploit it, as opposed to sitting around waiting on a situation to further develop.
Exactly. You know, Rumsfeld had something he talked about, like known knowns, unknown knowns. Have you ever heard that? Uh,
Oh, absolutely.
it was a good
It's
way of explaining, like,
I know what I know and I know what I don't know.
yeah,
It's the things that I don't know that I don't know that scare the hell out of me. Absolutely.
exactly. And that's just a way of developing your intelligence requirements, right? You
Yes.
can think about it that way, and it really makes sense when you're like, oh shit, sorry, this is the stuff
Mm.
I know I don't know, so I got to collect on this, or I got to have RFIs for this, because this is going to pop up and it's going to have an effect here, right?
Yep.
Um, and so early on, it can be hard, but when things start, you can start making assessments very quickly based on what you see,
Mm.
right? And based off those assessments, you can start making decisions, and you can speed up. You know, you can get the OODA loop. You start speeding that cycle up and making calls based on what you see. Um, and all of that has to do with planning. Like the more you can
Hmm.
pre-plan and the more work you put into it, the more understanding you get, the better it'll all play out.
Oh yeah.
Um,
And in a practical expression, that was the big point of the uh, the Flashpoint campaigns pro, right? The more you get out in front, the more effective your execution is going to be. The decision cycle is going to be faster because there's already a greater understanding of what your overall objective is. So now it's refinement. It's not making new decisions and communicating those new decisions. So that was I very appreciated that quality of that game, even if it ended up not working out in my favor because I ran out of time.
yeah, and Flashpoint was tough in the Commandant's Cup specifically because it was much easier to play as red than blue.
Hmm.
Um, both because the landing planner is a new tool, um, is a little clunky here or there. It doesn't
Hmm.
do exactly what we'd like, and red has the advantage of just moving and attacking. Blue has to
Hmm.
figure out how to land all their stuff and not get destroyed, and
That's right.
not know where, like, red knows where blue's going. Blue doesn't know
Yeah.
exactly where red is or any of their stuff is, and it
Hmm.
was the format I was a little frustrated with, um, because we didn't get to play both sides as each individual player.
Yep.
You know, that would maybe have, I don't know if it would have really changed anything, but it would have been more interesting to me to be able to play both sides. Um,
Yeah, that's always an interesting challenge. I do think as far as a team competition goes, having one person play blue, one person play red balances the team standing out a little bit. Doesn't help on the individual side of things. But I also think there was a lot of learning going on in that scenario, and I do think that having the amphibious assault is valuable. I think there's some different ways to change it to kind of go more into what we're describing the goals of some of these wargaming situations are. In this case, less PME like you're describing. We're not trying to shape and learn something particular, but we are trying to test the decision making ability of the participants. We're trying to see can they effectively prioritize what needs to be destroyed, what needs to be put ashore, what needs to be done in order to facilitate the objective, right? In this case, securing an airfield from an impending enemy assault that has this composition. And so I think, to your point, red was a little advantaged. Despite some of the frustrations you had, where it's like, man, I keep getting hit by this artillery. They're not even looking at anything. They're just hitting this one section of road. That's a little frustrating. And I would agree because I wanted ISR to be persistent and be able to actually follow what I was shooting at, but I didn't have that ability. But that was a game mechanic. That wasn't necessarily how we actually want to fight. So I think there's some opportunity in that game to really test a player's ability to create the kill chain and utilize that kill chain. And that's what we want to see. That's what we want to start teaching Marines whenever they play this game. That it's not just about like I have an observer, I have a weapon system. It's are they communicating in such a way that I can exploit what I'm seeing?
I agree, and I think the time limit and the objectives in that particular example I don't think any of us really played it right as blue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think there was a lot of trying to land to the X.
Yep.
And I think a lesson there is a similar lesson was learned in Gallipoli. Basically every amphibious assault ever, if you do it in the face of enemy opposition, you're going to have a bad time.
That's right.
And I think if if I would have done it again, I probably would have tried to land somewhere quite offset, deliberately obtuse, and
Yep.
not where they would expect. Get my entire force ashore there, and then advance on my objectives, and then
I
deal with the enemy. And I
I
think,
will I will agree with you. That was a piece of feedback I gave to myself where it became like, why did I get so dialed in to the airstrip? And I think it was because I allowed the distance of the enemy's MLRS capability, where initially I knew they couldn't reach the airfield. And so it made sense to get onto the airfield as rapidly as possible, forgetting that it doesn't matter if they can't see you. So if I insert somewhere that they can't see me, then it doesn't become in pure deference to HMH 464, like they're not going to be able to hit my my 53
mhm,
with MLRS if I'm landing somewhere that they're not even looking,
yep,
which there was opportunity to do that in retrospect, which is just proof positive that hopefully the scenario, maybe not the game, but the scenario might have to change for next year.
agreed. And that that scenario was called Anger Cross. We got changed to Pacific Guard. That is the EWS Ops Afloat final
Nice,
exercise, is an amphibious landing to take those areas.
nice.
And so that scenario, I helped give feedback to design like the landing planner and get that map specifically built into the game.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so for me, it's cool to see because it's like, shit, this is like the landing planner actually isn't bad, right? After you kind of
Yeah,
figure out
yeah,
the nooks and crannies of it, it's like, dude, this is pretty easy. There are some things that some of the weights are off. Some little feedback to
yeah.
have, but you can actually like assigning serials
Hmm.
to ask and actually synchronizing that. It abstracts like deck cycles and stuff like that, but
Yep.
you can get the broad strokes in, and that still could be a useful tool for students learning, hey, amphibious operations, how long is this going to take, where are we landing them, that type of thing.
Yep. Absolutely.
So I think it's still useful there. Um, and I think that when they changed the scenario in the final, which I didn't get to see because I got shooed away a number of
Yeah.
times when I tried to look, um, it sounds like they simplified it a little bit, and I think
Oh
it
yeah.
was a little bit easier for everyone to kind of wrap their head around. Um, and it's when you have asymmetric abilities like that, it's tough. And you're right. I,
Yes.
I think it was because each person played one side. It was
Mhm.
balanced. It unbalanced the individual scores, but I think the team scores were generally where they would have been.
Yep. I think that's fair. And it's easy to find a lot of areas where I wish one thing or I wish another. I've found the experience incredibly rewarding, incredibly valuable. And I only had one or two pieces of feedback that I would like to see different in the game, and I already hit on it a little bit, like the idea of creating that kill chain, like there being some type of mechanic to reflect it, even though there's not like a physical document that exists, but just knowing that I am assigning this asset to find it, I'm assigning this asset to kill it, and once they've done those, or once it's been found, I don't have to give it any more follow on instructions. Like I've already assigned this thing to happen. But that doesn't exist in the real world. That's a decision that has to be made by someone on the ground in the COC that says, "Yep, it's been found. I'm adjusting the instructions so that now I can actually execute the kill chain the way I anticipated it being used."
Yeah, and that could be because we've got like a contract vehicle. There could be a way for that because the way airstrikes are currently done is you give it a hex and it looks around in the hex and just attacks anything that's there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you could tell it, hey, I want you to look in these hexes and I want you to look for this unit,
Yep.
right? And you're effectively doing armed reconnaissance at that point, and
Yep.
it's going to go look in there and it's going to attack that thing. Um, or you're right, if you're like trying to shoot artillery at something, you should be like, hey, I want to observe that unit,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you tell the artillery that you're using this observer to attack this unit. If something happens to the
Yes.
observer, you're kind of SOL. But
Yeah, and I
you
think
know,
that's the inherent risk that you take. Like if my observer is an ISR platform and it finds tanks moving along the road. Maybe tanks being a bad example if I'm using just my 155. But if I've got troops moving on the road and I've had my ISR just watching it, so that I have a constant observer, I can have more accurate effects because there's not a delay where I'm just like pulling the lanyard and hoping it hits in the right spot. No, I see it. I know where it's going to be. But now I'm making that observer loiter, making it easier to shoot down. That's a risk that I am assuming, and if it gets shot down, that's on me. I made that choice. I prioritized hitting those troops that are moving along the road, and now I move on. Now I make another decision, and I think that's something else to work on. I think they've made phenomenal progress. It's very impressive to see that that's something that you were working on as I'm sorry, ADFAC. Is that the acronym that you use?
FACAD,
FACAD. Had it
faculty
back.
advisor. Yeah.
No, I think that's really cool to see that. That's good though. That means that's a generation of EWS that's playing a game that's teaching something in particular, but also has the ability to continue to grow and teach some of these future concepts that even if we don't have the technology for precisely yet, we're getting there. We're getting closer all the time.
No, absolutely. And Flashpoint Campaigns is like it's an awarded war game. Like it's one of those
Mm-hmm.
games that's won a bunch of awards. It's a high on a lot of lists. We get like best computer war games because it does a good job making it easy to wrap your head around,
Mm-hmm.
but preserving like, hey, if you want to look at the radar range of that capability, you can turn it on, right? You have to turn on your emitters. You can turn off your emitters, right? You can look at where you can be seen from. There's cover rating. Sometimes you won't be able to see a unit if you're on top of it. A lot of that is baked into the game in a reasonable level, and you can make it apparent to you, right,
Nice.
as the player. And so it's a good game, and it's a good game to keep working with. And I think
Yeah.
the professional edition allowing us to kind of get in there and kind of tweak it to use as we need to is really good.
Well, on that note, did you have any feedback on Joint Tactics Arena?
I had a number of feedback points for Joint Texas Arena
All right.
that I filed away and sent back to Mr. Barrick. Y- you know, the hey diddle diddle up the middle strategy that basically
Mm.
every game filed. Because you had to deploy to bases and you couldn't redeploy within a certain range, it created a problem where whoever went first could essentially get a free move to take two cities, and then that becomes a
Mm-hmm.
problem for the second player. And I would say in the majority of games that I witnessed, that is exactly what happened,
Hmm.
right? And it always put whoever basically initiative completely changed the game. If you went
Yep.
first, you got ahead. If you went second, you were on the back foot. There was nothing you could do about it. I like the actions that you can choose to take, but their sequencing of cards and having on-call cards
Mm-hmm.
created real problems.
Yep.
If you went first with the naval attack, you could potentially sink the entire force's navy without them being able to do anything about it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And maybe I had that sequence and I need to move that up and I can't move it up now. And so I think maybe you don't have the cards. You just say, hey, you can do these actions, and when you activate that unit, you can't activate it again, right? So
Interesting.
you get to do your naval, and you get to choose the order you do it in. It's like, all right, what am I going to start with? I'm going to start with this unit, and I'm going to activate this unit, and it's going to do this thing. Because that game is like every turn is abstracting like simultaneous play, and
Right.
so I think some of the concepts of you can only attack a specific unit once in the turn. A unit can only attack once in a turn, which borrows from some of the Napoleonic games a little bit. And then saying it all is basically happening at the same time. I'll tell you to get around that, because ultimately for most units, the light brigade, the motorized brigade didn't get used much. The Marines probably didn't get used at all,
Yeah.
right? Because putting them on the ship was too risky. And so everyone used the armor brigade and the mechanized brigade.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had to use my motorized brigade once because in the final I had to counter a penetration, and I surrounded his armor brigade,
Mm-hmm.
right, and that was just a reaction to the fact that I was on the back foot. So I destroyed a number of his mechanized forces that took the cities because I was ready for it, and I hit it like a sledgehammer and killed it. But then I lost my whole navy
Right.
like on his first naval action. It's just one of these things where it's like I can't do anything about this, so it doesn't feel satisfying as a player. You know,
It's interesting. Yeah. And not everyone that I've talked to has had that same experience. And I was playing someone who didn't have the experience having played it before, and I wonder how much we would have reached that level if we had had another turn, or just another opportunity. If we had made it to the finals, I would have approached it completely different, because I started off a little more conservative. I actually did try to do the amphibious assault, and what I discovered is because you're isolated to those beaches, getting there isn't enough. You're actually not close enough to affect a city, even if they only have like one brigade protecting it. And so I had this situation where it's like I'm about to wipe the floor with this guy, and it became like, okay, well here you are, like you're on the beach, and now I need to do a brigade movement in order to get them close enough to actually fight. And that in my opinion kind of neutralized the point of the amphibious assault. It's like, all right, well now I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I had done a division action because I could have moved further. I could have had more effects, and then it's kind of the same result of the number of forces that I could move, the number of positions I could influence. So now there's a naval component to the amphibious assault, which was kind of cool. But because I didn't do that super early, I was already a little down on the munitions, and so I did not have the chance to really like, oh, now I've had a chance to really destroy this guy's fleet. Which, like you're saying, if that's the first move you go, you could actually do some pretty long-lasting damage if that's the first course of action you take.
Yeah, and the way the game was done is if you took a naval action first, you left yourself wide open to get the division action, or not the division, but the brigade action straight into your cities, right?
Mm-hmm,
And it's like,
mm-hmm.
well, crap. You have no guarantees for anything, and so
Right.
yeah, I can take my naval action and go Winchester and all my missiles to make sure I at least use them,
Yeah.
right? Because it is a truth. If you don't use it, you lose it in
That's
that
true.
game off the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, the division actions like just too much, and it honestly takes too much time.
Mm-hmm.
Like it so some of those multiple brigade actions just take too much time, and having a facilitator there who's an OWS facilitator is useful. And I've been to the facilitators course also,
Yeah.
and so
Good.
I was trying to like teach rules about how we were doing stuff as we were
Yeah.
playing, because I'm not trying to like have them misread something and it turns
Yeah.
into a problem. Um, and I appreciate what the game is trying to do, but I made a number of recommendations that we just need to simplify.
Okay.
We need to simplify the game. It needs to move quicker. No one finished a game. No one finished 3 turns,
No.
right? And
No.
so it always ended and someone could not execute their plan.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's goodness there, though. It's just
Yes.
you just got to pare some things down and cut some cards out and change up how we do some things, and I think it can get there.
Yeah. I mean, I thought the game was incredibly compelling. It's definitely one that I thoroughly enjoyed. It's one I'd like to see published soon.
Hmm.
So I'm very hopeful that Tim is able to receive your feedback and then play test whatever it is he needs to. You can absolutely tag me in to volunteer for some play testing if he needs, because that was one of those games where I look up after 3 hours and say, all right, fine, I lost. Let's start over. Like I want to try something new. I didn't get the opportunities to try some of these really dramatic actions to see what might come of it. I tried one. All right, now I want to try something else. Let's do these different things. A lot of different ways to solve the problem. I think that's a great thing. I think it's great to have that tabletop game in the Commandant's Cup. What other games would you like to see being played in the fleet? So you've had a chance to talk a little bit about the games that you got to facilitate being created, being employed as a teaching tool at EWS. For teaching Marines in the fleet, what more games do you want to see out there that your Marines are playing?
So you know, Tress and Stratego were talked about in the previous interview you did. Those aren't bad. Chess is probably, it can get really technical really quick, but the concept is
Sure.
there, right? It's a game that it's easy to learn, hard to master,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I really like the Napoleon at War series, which are also in the
Good.
Wargaming Cloud,
Mm-hmm.
and they're old, but they can be procured. I've got paper copies of them, and they're really simple hex and counter games.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the older ones like Austerlitz or Borodino are, the results table is a little brutal.
Yeah,
If you play that in the cloud, it gets pretty rough. However,
it does.
if you understand the risk you're taking, it's
Mm-hmm.
still there. And so the games are still ultimately about, the principles of war, right?
Yes.
You're trying to economize somewhere, you're trying to mass somewhere, you're trying to, create some confusion for your opponent, and you're tactically taking risk to,
Mm-hmm.
to implement your plan. And then when you lose out someplace, you have to adjust, right? What do I now change because this is not unfolding like it should? Or this part worked out way better than I thought it would. I got really lucky up here. How do
Hmm.
I exploit this and really drive this home? And that's a game where you're talking like the Battle of Bagram. It was 200,000 on like just under 200,000 troops,
Hmm.
right? And it's abstracted into a game, and you're like, all right, I've destroyed a couple of these divisions. What does that mean, right? And it's understanding when you have the advantage and when to press the advantage, and
Hmm.
when you don't have
Hmm.
the advantage and when to back off, right? What is your objective? Are you achieving your objective? How much time do you have to do it, right? And so Napoleon at War, Napoleon's Last Battles, it's a similar thing. Those are just later ones. Are very simple games. Last Battles have some complexities in command that you can work into it, but you can work through uh, the combat results table. You can work through terrain effects chart. You can work through what the hexes mean and how units move and attack in a really basic die rolling structure. And it will exercise all of your risk under like acceptance, risk understanding. And those are really good games to start with. So I think especially the cloud, it has them. The only thing it doesn't do in the cloud is the defensive advance, which is something that's technically a rule.
Hmm.
Anytime someone retreats, the other side can advance, regardless if it's attacking or defending. Yeah, the so that kind of has a pretty big impact in the point at war that because you don't get to do it on defense. Sometimes you
Hmm.
can
Yeah.
really exploit like problems when they make bad attacks. Um,
Hmm.
those are good. Worthington Games has a number of Civil War games that are just a step up, right? So you take some of the rules into point of war and like, all right, we've got more range, we've got more complexity, let's move up, and then those will step into. There's was that Worthington? Yeah, that was Worthington, and then like Columbia Games has got some World War II games with blocks that just add more and more layers. And so to me, I think in the fleet, it's best to start with some older ones that are simple, right?
Hmm.
Understand how to like fight each other, and then kind of build on top of that. And if you go from one of those and you like play like another game, you don't have to own them, but play them. After you've done that and you start working in, and you understand all these things at a basic level, moving to a game with Littoral Commander is much easier. Because you're
Yep.
like, oh, terrain. What does that mean? Oh, it's the same thing. It's just different. It's a missile. It's no
Hmm.
different than a cannon as far as game mechanics are concerned.
That's right.
You're rolling a die to achieve to see what you get. This is what you get. You know, it's all there. But there are so many good games out there. Buka Sims has several very, very interesting games. There's a game called Task Force, which I own a copy of, um, which is like naval warfare in the Pacific in World War II.
Hmm.
And that becomes very interesting because it's a lot of similarities with naval warfare today, where you carry your task group, you're putting out like reconnaissance aircraft to try to find their ships, and you're choosing how many you're allocating to them, how many you're putting up in like air defense. And
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
just it's the same thing, just older,
Yeah.
right, and a little bit more simple. And it's a very interesting game. Japanese game designer, so all the ships are in English and Japanese,
Nice.
but you can fight out all the significant naval battles of World War II, or do like a free fight one, fleet on fleet. Um, some of them aren't particularly cheap, but if you know someone who's got them, it's still you can figure it out, and it's good games to play. Um, yeah, because I mean the cloud has got a lot of more modern games. Order of Battle. So it's a game that used to be. It's a Matrix game, right?
Hmm.
So it's Matrix Slytherin. It used to be in the Wargaming cloud. I have advocated to get it back. It is a computer-based war game um, that's a little bit more 3D, right? And you can fight out some historic World War II setting. You can fight out battles, but it's another one of those games that against an opponent, it's really easy to kind of figure out how it plays, but against a thinking opponent, it starts becoming more complicated. That's another good. It's a really good one. I would probably put it. It's a little bit easier to learn than Company Commander. A little bit more cartoony, but not crazy. Um, but I would highly recommend that
All right.
for a lot of especially like entry level computer war gamers
Okay.
because it's tactical, right? And you can get some small maps that are very tactical,
Hmm.
but you can really start figuring it out.
All right. I like that. That's a great comprehensive list. I'm really excited to hear that you're working on developing a fight club. And that's my sincere hope that more and more people learn about the different resources that we have, including the Marines themselves that are starting to participate, whether it's initially coming out of Marine Corps University, being both a student and an instructor, coming back into the fleet, and then just trying to get more guys into the fold. It's only going to benefit all of us. So I really appreciate you being able to come out and chat with me. And I'm interested to see. I know you participated in the Napoleon at War tournament, um, which we didn't get a chance to talk about, but I'd be more than interested to, as these tournaments keep coming up, to have recurring guests come back on, and we'll talk about how each of those tournaments went and the different lessons learned or different pieces of feedback you want to provide about each of those tournaments. So hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about whatever's coming up next. It might actually be Top Tactics is the next tournament on the slate. I know Tim, he's carrying the wargaming load on his shoulders right now, especially if you're not at Marine Corps University anymore to help him out. I don't know how large a staff is still there amongst the faculty that are working with him to help facilitate all these different tournaments and whatnot. But hopefully we'll be able to touch base again with Top Tactics or whatever tournaments are coming out of Marine Corps University Fight Club.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely happy to come back and talk about it as things unfold. And I am still active on the cloud. So if you want to throw any challenges my way, or anybody who watches wants to throw a challenge my way, IronMarshal, all one word with one L. Marshall has one L in it.
One L. That's right.
I am open and ready to accept anything. I think I have like 10 ongoing games that people like forget they're playing me and just will stop. And it's like, what is this?
Yeah. Well, at least for our mind, because I feel like I realized halfway through that you were testing some of these different theories just like I was. It's like, well, what if we end up playing each other in a final somewhere? Like, I don't want to learn that I can do something unique and then him already have a solution for it. But we'll be sure to wrap those games up too.
You know, they were open. You accepted them. You know, it is what
That's
it is.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right.
All right. Like I said, Alec, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being a part of the Red Dime Wargaming, and we'll keep playing. See you out there on the field.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.